The Mill Owner's Daughter.
Chapter 15. We live in a beautiful county. There's spectacular countryside left in Lancashire despite the demands of industry. Matthew nodded and smiled wryly at his daughter's remark. It was now December and Irene Rose was enjoying her 4th month of pregnancy. Matthew had worked for weeks pulling strings, using all the influence he could muster to arrange a visit to the prison at Lancaster Castle. The train returning from Lancaster had just passed Horwich. The towering mass of Winter Hill dominated the skyline to their left, a sprinkling of snow on its upper slopes. The Lancashire plains stretched into the distance to their right. Soon they'd be entering Bolton. They, young Daniel, Irene Rose and her new family, Faith, Benjamin and Constance, along with Janet Morrison, Robert and young David, Michael O'Donnell and Daniel Ackroyd, together with the mill owner, had spent the night in Lancaster, having visited Richard Pilling and David Morrison in the castle the day before. All members of the party were somewhat subdued, knowing the government seemed determined to make the Lancaster trial of the Manchester Trade Union and Chartist leaders fixed for the following spring a major show trial. A lot was at stake. Evidently having the chance to put Fergus O'Connor out of action seemed an opportunity too good to miss for the upholders of justice and liberty, as the publication of correspondence between the Home Secretary and Prime Minister would eventually show. On the 30th of September, Sir James Graham addressed Sir Robert Peel by letter informing him, "I propose to charge O'Connor as a general conspirator with the others, and not to proceed against him for libel merely, or for acting as a delegate, or taking part in the meetings of delegates. I propose to try him in the same indictment with the worst of the defendants who headed mobs, made seditious speeches, and stopped mills and factories. I shall blend in one association the head and the hands, the bludgeon and the pen, and let the jury and the public see in one case the whole crime, its commencement and its consequences." This determination on the part of the government to make an example of the leaders, and in particular to set O'Connor up as the main culprit when he actually opposed the strike, a position he'd made all too clear in the Northern Star, was matched by an equal commitment to clamp down on those sections of the press critical of the government and the economic and political system, not least the burgeoning working-class press. On the 15th of October, in a letter to Sir James, Sir Robert Peel wrote, "I think the public would support us just now, after the experience of recent events, in prosecuting the editors and publishers of some of the worst papers. I would select articles that encourage the renewal of the attempt to carry the Charter or any other public measure by physical force." By physical force, Sir Robert, of course, meant public meetings, no matter how peaceful, mass demonstrations and strikes. To defend the individual liberty of Her Majesty's subjects, it was evidently necessary to deny the rights of free speech and of assembly, let alone the basic freedom of the masses to withdraw their labour, the one and only freedom that distinguished them from a serf or a slave. Many of the defendants at the forthcoming Lancaster trial faced the death penalty. Despite this, Irene Rose had found Richard Pilling in far better spirits than she'd expected. He'd told her he'd managed to strike up a decent relationship with one of the warders. This kind and worthy gentleman brought him books and pamphlets to read, together with writing materials. He also smuggled the Northern Star into prison for him, thus risking his own position. Richard had commenced writing a book, and seemed to be in good health as well as in good spirits. Irene Rose had promised him she'd visit his family. Having thanked her, Richard pointed out that from a purely economic point of view, both they and he were better off. His remaining working son now had one less mouth to feed and one less body taking space up in the family home, whilst he had food guaranteed and no rent to worry about, luxuries he'd never enjoyed whilst working. When asked about his diet, he laughed. "Better than your average Ashton Weaver, I reckon, Rose. I brek me fast with a full quart of porridge made with water, what was called Waterloo porridge. I've 1½ pounds of tatties for me dinner, and another quart of porridge for me supper. I get a bit of walking outside in the yard most days. I'm getting a pound of bread a day. All I need to make it perfect is a gradely sliver of fat bacon now and again, and I'll be happy as a pig in muck. Janet has similarly been relieved to find David in equally good spirits. He told her the warders were treating the Manchester contingent with respect, and generally regarded them as political prisoners, which is of course what they were, as opposed to common criminals. Surprisingly, he was of the opinion that by the time they came to trial, the government's position would have softened, and the death penalty would cease to be an option. "You ne'er know, Janet, we may end up in Australia," he joked. "They say many a us Charties out there. They'll have reeked to vote by the time we arrive there." Whether David had inside knowledge she did not know, as she confided to Irene Rose later that evening, after they put the children to bed. David's big problem had always been his propensity to allow hope to triumph over experience, but nonetheless she found her husband's attitude more than a little comforting. "Good night, Auntie Rose." "Good night, Daniel, my love. Sleep tight. Make sure the bugs don't bite." She slid her hand through his dark hair and kissed him. He turned over, his eyes already closed, tired out from his journey and the day's adventures. "Mum used to say that to me." The girl's voice floated across the room. Irene Rose turned to the bed in which Constance was about to go to sleep. The youngster sat upright, her back supported by a pillow, her dark hair tumbling over a white shift. "Did she, little one? My mother said it to me every night without fail." "Where is your mum, Mummy Rose?" "She's dead, Constance. She was taken away from me when I was still a young girl." She crossed the room, sat on the side of the bed, and slid her arm around her adopted daughter. "Oh," the youngster responded, as though this information was unexpected. "Dost thou miss her?" Irene Rose nodded, a smile on her face. "Yes, Constance, I do, and I think of her every single day." She gazed into the child's dark brown eyes and smiled once more. "We just have to get on with life and remember the good times we had together, don't we? If we remember those we love, they're always with us, really, don't you think?" Constance just gazed back at her, saying nothing for a moment. Then she nodded her head. "Mum told me if aught bad happened I had to look after our Benji and Faith. She said us mun stay together." "Your mum was quite right, Constance, and that's what we'll do. You, Faith and Benjamin are part of my family now, and there's a new brother or sister on the way for you." Constance smiled. "Mummy Rose, can I help you when the new babby comes?" she asked. As Irene Rose left the children's bedroom, Janet stepped onto the landing and quietly shut the door to the adjoining room. "The bairns are awa'," she said to Irene Rose with a smile. "Can we have a wee talk?" "Of course, Janet. What is it?" "I need employment. May your feyther be wanting any hands, Rose? I really do need work. I'll do anything." "I'm not sure, Janet. The best thing to do is to ask him. He won't bite. What I do know is he's just landed a big contract to supply yarn to a company in Belgium." She suddenly frowned. "Didn't you once tell me you were a seamstress?" Janet nodded. "Aye, I believe I did." "I think we should talk to father right now. I know he's been having discussions with Mary Upton about forming a new workers' cooperative to manufacture clothes for mill workers. They'll need seamstresses."